How now, thou witless rabble of lice-strewn moon-calves? Forsooth, thou art more vermin than man. Master James Raggi, with singular and mischievous moon-calfery, hath deigned to furnish me with sundry copies of his latest literary conjurings, that I might peruse and pass judgment upon them. And lo, being a man of honour, fortified by discipline, godliness, and possessed of no small measure of courage and perspicacity, I shall endeavour forthwith to provision you with mine musings on his curious tome concerning minstrels and the devilry that they do unleash. Mine ancestors were correct indeed to ban music, dancing, and other earthly delights during their too short reign under Cromwell. But hark, this 17th century styling becomes vexing, so let us returneth to the king's diddly. Jim Raggi sent me some of his latest releases, amongst which we have the music of Ericha Zann, which of course is a Cthulhu reference. Now this purports to be the Bard class for Lamentations of the Flame Princess, but it isn't really. This is not actually something that is really meant to be used in play, I don't think, and yet with typical Raggi meanderings and issues, it is usable isn't quite the right word, but at least inspiring. As you can see, it kind of reflects a lot of Mr. Raggi's obsessions, music being one of them, and it also is a bit of a clap back against some people. For example, you can see Mr. Critical Role there, and around him it says no fun, no AI, no trends, no Borg, which is obviously a bit of a swipe at Morkborg. So it purports to be the Bard class, but it isn't exactly. It makes a Call of Cthulhu reference, and it makes fun of Critical Role and numerous other targets, it must be said, within. Now, this reflects Master Raggi's concerns and fixations when it comes to music. So, to Mr. Raggi, who is a connoisseur of the blackest of metals and the darker side of things overall, I think in classical times he would have been like a professor of music or something, would drive people mad with his musings. But to him, music and the scene surrounding music is seen differently to the way that you might see it. In much the same way that Mr. Raggi sees his games and his material as a sort of extension of his philosophy, and as something weird and unsettling and horrific, so he feels similarly about music. That music should probably mean something, even if that thing is, oh god, someone shut that person up. It should be affecting. I think bubblegum pop would make Mr. Raggi's head explode. So this isn't so much a Bard class as a sort of manifesto. And if you've read any of James's posts or watched any of his videos where he does talk about music, excuse me, or his interviews and so on, yeah, he has a very sort of singular view of music and art in general, that it should disturb, transgress, upset, know no limit or boundary, basically. I agree with him like 95% on that. The 5% difference being that I think other stuff can exist and it doesn't detract from the rest. But I like stuff that's more interesting and find it as frustrating as James does, my fellow James does, when there's no ambition. And I both again, similarly to James, both revel in the fact that art I create or appreciate upsets people, and get upset that it upsets people, because I don't think they're getting upset over something that is worth being upset by. But regardless, bards attract a certain amount of love from some quarters and a certain amount of hate from other quarters. I think we're both on the hate bandwagon. And this Lamentations version of the Bard is certainly a figure of unpredictability, chaos, and hate. Now, it does have all the features of a class, which isn't saying much about sort of basic D&D clones. And it is chaotic, unpredictable, and potentially disastrous for the party and everyone around them. So possibly better used to create villains, which is oddly fitting as well. However, it is technically playable, but I think you would have to tone down a lot of the effects. Because Lamentations bards are pariahs, and anyone who associates with them are pariahs, because they make a hellish noise that resonates with the music of the spheres and therefore can alter reality. So this is really a third magical type, a third magical class, right? You've got your magic users, you've got your clerics, and you have your bards. But these bards are not pale imitations of wizards or clerics. They are their own thing. And this could form the basis of a freeform magic system, which would be a hell of a lot more interesting, I think, than standard Vancian magic or similar. So in the case of bards, you use your instrument, you gather power, and then you exert it to do one thing or another. So you can banish stuff, you can summon stuff, and that's as bad an idea as it is in the other version of Lamentations, as you can tell by the amount of space devoted to it. You can enchant things. Here we see the example of the kind of Disney mops, right, from Fantasia. And you can dispel things. And this is all horribly unpredictable. Your performances will tend to cause trouble, even if you roll well, which isn't particularly likely. And otherwise, they're kind of slightly roguey, I suppose, like most bards are, but without the number of skill points necessarily that one might find there. So in many ways it's closer to what I would think of as a bard, but it is also deadly and weird and strange, which is of course what one would expect from Lamentations. So if you want another reference for creating summoned monsters, it's useful there. It's not quite an esoteric monster generator, but it's getting there. It's kind of updated and revised, I suppose. Yeah, and it could form the basis for a freeform magic system for old school RPGs. So you might find that more interesting. And you might find that actually genuinely useful, as well as a lot of the enchantment effects and so on could be a useful sort of random magical item generator for those who want one. Oh, and you can charm and ensorcel people as well, and you can mundanement. This throws me every time I read it. Take away someone's burdens. Excuse me. Soothe the weary by manipulating eldritch frequencies. Disrupt and dispel magical effects. So yeah, cast off summonings, all of that kind of stuff. Not summonings, curses, all of that sort of thing. Very useful when it works, which it won't a lot of the time. So you know, be careful. Most of the stuff well, all of the stuff that Raji sent me has a certain go fuck yourself quality to it this time. I don't think that's that surprising. I got this and a sort of adventure location thing that you can kind of plug in, which I will look at tomorrow, and a whole adventure setting in collaboration with Zach Smith, which it obviously is in and of itself, merely by its existence, a sort of middle finger to the RPG establishment, if you like. So look forward to those rest of the reviews this week. Like Raji, I think I often do a lot of my best work when something or someone has pissed me off, and I want to give them a stern talking to in the form of a game, right? So there's a certain reactiveness to these releases, particularly these two. It's effective because being pissed off by something gives you a certain amount of passion and energy, which cannot help but come through in books and materials, and that's certainly the case here. Is it more than just a novelty release? Yes, because it has those seeds of useful ideas and useful tables that could be repurposed to other things, and it does technically provide you with a bard character type. So I'm kind of curious actually now to see what Jim would do with a druid or a monk or some of these other classes, both from the past and the present. I'm sure he won't do any of that, but bards in particular have drawn his ire, and I certainly understand why. So is it worth getting? I mean, it's a fuck you to the RPG establishment. It's a bit of a fuck you to people who keep demanding additional classes and things. And to me, it's worth it on that score, but I am a perverse and strange gentleman, just as Mr. Raji is. It's fairly slim. The hardback hardly seems necessary. You know, this could have been an email. I mean, this could have been a pamphlet. It is, somewhere around 35 pages. So a little bigger than a zine would be, almost. Style-wise, I like some of the illustrations, others I don't. These more graphical ones are effective, and even the more cartoony stuff comes through a bit better in this book than it has in some other older releases. That's just a stylistic taste, I guess, rather than the full choice necessarily on my part. And taste is too subjective to settle anything too much on. But yeah, it's a... Lamentations always produces good-looking stuff, right? And printed to high quality in Finland. So, you know, what you're going to do. Style-wise then, it was an amusing read. It made me think. It put me through my paces trying to figure out how I could use this for something, right? Even though it's not really meant to be used, but then he can't help himself but produce something that does have useful sides to it. It'll just take a bit of work, and that's not really what this is meant for. But the writing's good, amusing, certainly. Style-wise then, I'm going to give it a 4. I think it's fine, it's great, it's good. The cover, the pose could have been slightly better. That's the only thing that I would say. But then it's kind of making fun. I mean, she's got a trombone, for fuck's sake. You're not supposed to take this seriously. But it could have been a slightly more animated and engaging pose and stuff going on the cover. In terms of substance, right, it's intriguing. There are useful ideas and so on here that you can half-inch and use for other purposes. The Bard itself is probably best relegated to NPC status, but it is amusing. It's kind of a one-trick pony, and once you've read it and had your laughs, then maybe you go back and you find some stuff you can extract and actually use, like the tables, like the underpinnings of the magic system and so on, but then you got to work to make it work. So I'm going to say 4 for style, 4 for substance. That's 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5. If you're a Lamentations collector, worth it. If you're a Jim Raggi fan and you're interested in a sort of little bit of detective work as to how he thinks about music, worth it. If you're a nuts and bolts engineer and mechanic when it comes to D20 and OSR type systems, there's stuff here that you can puzzle out and use in other ways. So, you know, for 32 pages, 35 pages, whatever it actually is, not bad at all. So yeah, it's 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5. Recommended, but I think you need to have a certain mindset, which most Lamentations players and games masters already have. There you go. Zang. Back tomorrow with more. There are certain kinds of people. Ale-drinking people. People who did a little too much acid in the 60s. People who wear large warm jumpers and take long brisk walks in the countryside. These people maintain that fairies not only exist, but that they are very common. They also tend to believe that fairies are a countryside phenomenon, much like casual cruelty to animals, sexual intercourse with sheep, and having an impenetrable and parochial accent. This is, of course, rather wide of the mark. Fairies have always had a strong relationship with man, donning his socks, cobbling his shoes, cleaning his houses, drowning him, marrying him, and swapping his children for malformed hydrocephalics as a bit of a jape, and otherwise aiding or demeaning the efforts of man. Fairies do not need our belief to exist, they need us and the things that we leave around. Like an urban fox or the aerial rat known as the pigeon, if they survive, they will have adapted to city life and found their niches, not in tending to flowers and trees, but in crashing computers, letting down the tyres on people's cars, and eating leftover pizza. Urban Faerie is a game of those kind of fairies, gone feral and urban, adapted to modern life. It's a comedy game of hijinks, weirdness, and strangeness, and it almost runs itself. You want Urban Faerie Pocket Edition, which is revised and updated with better art and edited writing, and it's available from post-mort.com, DriveThruRPG, and lulu.com.